welcome back to Renovating the Soul podcast. I am your host, Alexandria Robinson, and really I should be welcoming myself back because, baby, we were sick for the entire month of February, and I keep having to keep myself from saying March because that's how fast time has flown by, that it's already the end of March, which is crazy. Y'all, I never expected to get sick and to be sick for that long. It started with my youngest son getting an ear infection, and then he got the antibiotics, and he had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics, so I had to take him to the emergency room. And then literally that week after, when I say we, me and the three boys, we all got sick. My husband somehow never gets sick. I don't know how he does it, but me and the three boys, we got sick, and we were sick for a month, and we're really just kind of getting over some stuff. Like, I still have a little congestion. My youngest one still kind of gets runny nose here and there, but that could also be allergies because it's springtime. But anyways, y'all, I am so sad that I had to miss a few episodes. It really broke my heart. I really tried not to get discouraged because I've shared on my personal social media that my word for this year is consistency. And with this podcast, it's so important for me to stay on it, to stay consistent. And when I wasn't able to get up and force myself to record the episodes, and I was struggling. I was like, maybe this is your sign that you give up, that you quit because you're way in over your head. And so I had to struggle through, being sick, taking care of the boys, taking care of myself, and then also with those doubts and just, the frustration that comes with not being able to move and do what you want to do. I had to take time off of work. It was just crazy. It was so crazy. And I guess the good thing is that the boys didn't lose their spirit. They're still pretty up and spunky. We didn't have COVID. We didn't have the flu. I thought it was just going to be your basic cold. But I've been hearing that something like this is going around where it lasts for a long time anyway. So I know we're not the only ones. We just end up getting caught we end up catching whatever it was. So, but I'm back. I am back, and I didn't quit. I didn't quit. So, no, I am here. I'm back. I'm super excited to continue on. It sucked too because we left right at mid-season, we left right at mid-season, episode 5. That's what I was trying to say. So we left right at episode 5, and I was so pumped about that. I was like, man, we made it halfway because the first season will have 10 episodes. And then life happened. So anyways, I am back. I'm so excited to be with you all. Thank you so much for your patience, for your love, for your support, for your encouragement. Even the frustration that I got from people who were like, when is the next episode coming out? When are you doing the next episode? Like, even that is motivating because to be missed, to be desired in that way, that you all want to hear the next topic, that you all want to engage in the podcast in that way, made me want to continue on, made me want to get up, So I appreciate all of the love, the support, the DMs, the messages, and all of that stuff. So, anywho, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the episode that we're going to do today, which is actually going to be a part 1 and part 2. So this episode will be part 1. The next episode will be part 2. Before we jump into what the topic is, I want to talk a little bit about how the season is structured so far, what you all have seen so far. So what you've heard is that not every episode explicitly talks about the soul or renovating, right? We talk about various topics that all play a role into our soul, that show up in our everyday lives, that cause us to look deep within, that are a part of doing the work. But not every episode has been, this is what the soul is, or this is what renovating is. We talked about why the soul matters in the first episode, But since then, we've hit on, like I said, several different topics. And so I want to introduce Soul Talks. I want to introduce this thing called Soul Talks, where we have these intentional conversations about the soul and what it means to renovate, what it means to look within, and what it means to actually be doing the work, really giving the practical tools and tips, breaking down what the soul is, the compartments of the soul, what we understand about the soul, where we lack understanding about the soul, right? So that's what these soul talks are, and I'm pretty excited and pumped to start doing them. Today we're gonna have our first soul talk. So part 1 will be this episode. Like I said, part 2 will be the next one. So today in part 1, we're gonna be talking about the renovating part of renovating the soul. So breaking down that and exploring that topic a little more. Which I know I keep saying it, but I've been gone for a long time. I'm back and I'm better, as Bright. Lord, can't say the boy's name. Bryson Tiller? Yes, Bryson Tiller would say. I'm back and I'm better. And then the part 2 will be a deep dive into the philosophical views of the soul, right? So I'm super, super excited to be talking about this. After the first episode, Why the Soul Matters, a lot of people reached out and they were like, I never thought about the soul in this way. I didn't realize how big of a role that the soul played, or I didn't realize that I should be paying more attention, right, to what's going on within my soul. It's just not a conversation that we're always having, and I get that. I totally get that. That's why I'm starting this podcast, right, to kind of make it normal, to make it your normal, everyday kind of practical thing, and to make it a part of our life rhythm too, right? So, I'm really excited to continue that conversation, to give you all more on both the renovating aspect and on the soul. So let's jump in. So in the first episode, I gave 3 definitions of renovating. I'm going to read those again, and then I'm going to add one more. The dictionary definitions are, and these are the ones that I read in the first episode: to repair and improve something. This is what renovating is. To repair and improve something. The process of improving broken, damaged, or outdated things, making something new, or bringing something back to life. And then the one that I want to add is to restore to a former or better state. I said in the first episode, I really enjoy all of these definitions. If you're like me, when you hear the word renovating, one of the first things that probably comes to your mind is HGTV, or renovating a house, right? That more practical thing that our minds might jump to, of renovating a house, renovating a space. And so I love these definitions that really apply to renovating, a house, but also when you look at how they apply to renovating our souls and to renovating ourselves, that we are repairing or improving a part of us, that it is the process of improving something broken or damaged or outdated within us, that we are making something new or bringing something back to life, right? We're learning, or there's a part of us that's been suppressed or lie dormant that we're bringing back to life. And then the last one, we're restoring to a former or better state. And with this last definition, to restore to a former or better state, I want to address this specifically because when we think about going back to a former state, we may think about going back to a former version of who we are. And if you're like me, you've tried to do that, and it's proven to be more difficult than it sounds, because sometimes we're trying to tell ourselves to go back to the me from 10 years ago, or the college me, or the fun mom me, or the early marriage me, or whatever it is, right? And we try to do that, and it proves to be, again, a super difficult, complicated task, because we cannot always go back to who we used to be. But instead, we have to restore, improve, move from where we are now. It doesn't mean that we have to lose all those elements. It just means that we have to take where we are now, right, with the things that we love then, and try to move and restore from there. However, when you think about renovating a house, and we're going to talk about this more in a second, sometimes there are things that are done to a house and they've been done wrong, or it's damaged, right? And so you need to repair it to bring it back to the former place, or the to the former place or to the better place of where it was, right? So you're not necessarily changing anything. Let's take a pipe, for example. If there's a pipe burst, I'm not necessarily taking out the pipe and getting a prettier pipe. I'm taking out that pipe and I'm restoring that part of the house, that bathroom, whatever it is, back to its former state. And so when we think about that, when it comes to us, sometimes it's not about going back to a former version of who we are, but instead kind of coming back to the basics, like coming back to the foundational things. I liken this, probably the best example that I can think of is when you're in a relationship. And sometimes in a relationship, you lose certain foundational elements of yourself, and you don't realize that until you're either out of the relationship or until maybe you run across something and you're like, hey, I used to do that, or I used to be that, or I used to, and these are like your core foundational things, right? Like these are, things that are really part of the structure of who you are, and not necessarily just like the add-ons, so to speak. And so I know it sounds weird to say, like, bring back to the former state. Are you saying go back to the former me? No. Sometimes we can't go back to who we used to be. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Sometimes we are going to have to take who we were, who we are now, and figure out a new, better, improved version of us. And then there are those times where we can apply this definition that says to restore to a former state, where I would say that former state is more of the foundational state, a structural state. So I hope that makes sense. I just kind of wanted to expand upon that definition more, but I've already hinted at this, but I'm sure when you hear the word renovate or renovating, if you're like me, your mind goes straight to HGTV or houses or spaces, right? You start to probably see the cabinets and the counters. It could just be me. But that's what comes to mind, and that's what's most associated with renovating, and rightfully so, right? HGTV is huge in its own right, but also flipping houses became a thing not too long ago, and it's not uncommon to meet everyday people who flip houses. So when you hear renovating, that's kind of what we associate with renovating probably before anything else. You wouldn't think to say renovating the soul. You would think renovating a house or a space, right? If someone said, I'm renovating, your mind's 9 times out of 10 gonna go to, 10 times out of 10 gonna go to, oh, they're renovating their house or a new space or something like that, right? But just as renovating a physical space involves repairing and upgrading and enhancing like a structure or like bringing certain appearance, bringing it up to date, renovating the soul is a similar process. And so I want to take this the practical and everyday idea of renovating a house or a space, and I want to use that as an analogy for renovating our souls. And so I have been, if you can tell, I've been on my HGTV kick. Now, I did not grow up an HGTV girl. I really didn't get into HGTV until my adulthood because I couldn't really relate to them buying houses and changing houses and selling houses and house hunters. My mom's always been into that stuff, into those shows, but I just could not get into it. But it wasn't until my adulthood and until we started, looking at houses, and I started, this is a little tidbit about me. I think I've already said this, but I started doing like design in Sims and just kind of seeing how much fun it was to upgrade something or to take an empty space and add your own flair. And I probably did more interior design than renovating. In these last few years, I really gotten into HGTV, but I have specific shows that I watch. So my absolute favorite show is Unsellable Houses. Unsellable Houses is amazing. First of all, it is based in my home state of Washington, which I don't know if there's been another HGTV show in Washington, or if there's one currently. I don't know one. This is the one that I found. They're twin sisters, Leslie and Lindsay, and they are probably the funniest people that you'll see on TV. I really just love them. So, but what they do on Unsellable Houses is they sell homes, they renovate homes, because they have a real estate company, and then they renovate homes, and then they do the interior design or the staging for the homes. And the homes that they renovate, they're typically older. They're built in the 70s, in the 80s, and in the 90s. And though every home is not still stuck in that year, so some people have tried to renovate themselves, what happens is these people typically put their house on the market, and it doesn't sell for a period of time, that's when they call Leslie and Lindsay and they say, hey, my house has been on the market for 30 days, 60 days, 15 days, and it's not selling. We're not getting people in. Like, could you all come in and take a look at our space? And so Leslie and Lindsay come in, they walk the house, they look at the spaces, right, that need to be updated. And the houses require anything from simply painting a room, right, to repairing the roof, to structural damage and corrections that usually are not found until they actually start the renovation process. But I'm just saying that to say it can require some of the most basic things, and it can require some of the most costly things. And then they do spaces that are small, they do spaces that are large, but they really focus on the whole house. So they look at the inside, the front yard, the backyard, and they're really big about curb appeal. Look at me using my HGTV real estate lingo, but they're really big about like curb appeal, which I love too. Is that they focus on the whole house, because I've seen other shows where they won't touch the backyard, they won't touch the front yard, right? They'll just renovate the inside. But Leslie and Lindsay really do try to look at the whole house in order to get it to sell. They do this, they put a portion of their money into, I don't want to get like too deep into the weeds about the show, so you have to watch it, but they put a portion of their money into the renovation process. And so that kind of I think that it creates more incentive and buy-in from the seller to have them on board, because Leslie and Lindsay, they're going to invest their own money, and then at the end their goal is to sell the house for higher than what the sellers were trying to sell it for, so that they get back their investment. But not only do they get back their investment, but then there's money left on the table for them and the sellers to switch. And that's what got me on it. Like, y'all, them houses in the first couple seasons were selling for so much. I was like, no way. What kind of trickery, sorcery, weird stuff is going on with this? Because this is crazy. But they're really good at what they do. They're some of the top real estate agents. I can't remember if I think they said in the Pacific Northwest, and it shows. It shows. Those girls are absolutely amazing, and they know the Washington market so well. And so so kind of looking at that, right? These houses, I always think about this, like the houses that they're renovating were once top of the line for their time, but now there's a new market, right? With a new style, and there's a new generation of people who are buying homes. And it doesn't matter if that's from 2021, 2022, 2023. It's almost as if, because I think that there's about 3 or 4 seasons of the show, and each year has really been different. And you can see the trends change, the times change, the buyers change. And where they're at in Washington, a lot of people are moving up there for tech. So there's a bigger price point that people can afford. People were buying houses with cash, right? So it's just interesting to see how things that used to work don't work anymore. And so practically, like I was saying, they will walk the house to see the current condition. They make a plan that works with the budget. They look at the market, and then they go to doing the work. But sometimes there are unexpected issues that surface, as I mentioned. So these things they don't always discover until after they start the renovation process, until they start pulling back the layers and pulling up the carpet and taking down the walls, right? And these can have a major effect, a significant effect on their budget, the timeline, and it sometimes in this last season has threatened the completion of a project, or even threatened it being able to sell, because that's how big some of the issues have been, especially like I said, in this last season. And so now I kind of want to look at this correlation to us. Like, what does this mean? How does this apply to us when we're talking about renovating the soul? What I love is that you can't just fix the surface level. You have to ensure the foundation is stable. And so not just with this show, but with other shows, when you don't see the inspections done, but there are inspections that happen, because you cannot just start to renovate a home without knowing how it is structured, because you don't want to go in and take out a beam or a wall or something that is foundational to that structure, which means if I take out that beam or I take out that wall, it could cause the floor to crumble, or it could cause damage later on, right? And so you can't just go into the house and start tearing stuff up. You have to inspect it. You have to know the current condition, and you can't just, like I said, fix the surface level. You have to ensure that the foundation is okay. And when you start to uncover those problems, once you get the plans and you get the blueprints and you understand how the house is structured, you still encounter issues, because even when you have the blueprints, even when you have the plans, that doesn't tell you what has happened to that house in 20 or 30 or 40 years. You still have to wait and go along with the process to see what might be uncovered. And for us, the foundation is our soul. Like the structure, the foundation is our soul. When we are renovating, we are making sure that our foundation is stable. And we can look at maybe the cabinets and the counters and all these, and carpets and all these other things, and painting, right? All of the things are part of the process as some of the other what's called faculties of our soul, right? So things that have been associated with our soul: courage, bravery, our mind, our beliefs, our thoughts, right? Making sure that all of these things are addressed and that they're in proper order. But we first have to make sure that our foundation is stable. And so while we're not changing light fixtures or pulling up carpet, we are focused on various areas of our souls to renovate, improve, or bring back to life. So our renovating process, right, it would involve certain things. And we're going to talk about a few of them. We're not going to get into everything, obviously, but we're going to get into a few of them. And one of the first things that we've talked about probably on every single episode is self-reflection or introspection or deep contemplation. This is helping us to become more aware about what is happening in and around us. What is affecting our behaviors, our attitudes, feelings, and beliefs, right? Self-reflection can be in our quiet time. It can be when we're in the car. It can honestly come up when when we do say something, right? I said something that was like, oh, why'd you say that? Or I did something, or something made me feel a kind of way. Like, why did that give me that feeling? But the idea when you're talking about self-reflection, introspection, deep contemplation, this isn't just in the moment. This is creating intentional time to reflect, to go deeper, to contemplate on things that have happened, on things that you've done, on things that you've said, on things that have caused deep emotion or pain within you, right? It is a very intentional thing, because I don't want to mislead us into thinking that it's just while you're walking down the street, or like I said, when someone does say something like, yeah, I'm self-reflecting. Like, no, you actually create space and time for yourself to go a little deeper, right? For yourself to self-reflect. You could stop at the end of the month and go, let's look back on what has happened, right? Or again, when things come up, we don't ignore them. We don't turn the blind eye. We do go deeper to say, oh man, I didn't realize that bothered me. And instead of us ignoring it, which we're going to talk about a little more in a second, but instead of us ignoring it, we sit, we reflect, we look within. And we're going to talk more on another episode specifically about reflection and introspection, because I throw those words around a lot, but I really want to take a deep dive into those. But anyways, that's one piece of our renovating process. Another piece is healing, right? Which is obviously easier said than done. But I know people who will say, I'm healed, and they ain't. So you can't just say it. And it's not just one therapy session or one altar call or one, book you read. Healing is a process. And like I said, it's easier said than done. But much of renovating our soul is healing from old wounds, and maybe even some new ones, right? As well. But we're being honest about the things that have hurt us and are currently hurting us. And I think this is important because I guess you can probably tell from the way that I talk of who I'm kind of targeting. And I don't mean to say that in a way where I'm like saying that those who are not here cannot listen and enjoy and get something from the podcast. But I do hope that there are those people out there who have not been honest about their hurt, who have not taken the time to self-reflect, because this is for you. This is me encouraging you and trying to get you to see the importance of healing and self-reflection and renovating the soul, because all of these things are components of it. When it comes to healing, I've seen and I've been guilty of not being honest about something hurting me. And in fact, it's kind of ironic. Today, I think my husband said to me, if you don't, I forgot how he said it, but essentially he was telling me that when something upsets me or when something hurts my feelings, I need to say it. And to me, I'm like, not always. I think he said anytime something hurts your feelings, you need to say it. And that was with him, but still, I think that was such a reminder for me, because I will suppress it, compress it, push it away. I won't be honest that something has hurt me. And lately, and not with him, but lately, I've tried to be more honest in the moment, at least with myself. I really haven't gotten to the place where I'm honest with other people that they have hurt me, because sometimes I'm nervous about how they're going to respond. But I do, like even with what the conversation was surrounding with my husband, I knew what hurt me and that it hurt me. I just didn't voice that. I didn't say it because I'm like, I don't want to bring you into that process. I need to process it on my own, right? But we're in a marriage. We should communicate. It's a little different. And so I'm still working on that part of it of like, okay, I'm honest with myself. I'm letting myself know that yes, it hurt, instead of running from it, instead of hiding from it, instead of cowering down and pushing it to the side, And so healing is another part of that renovating process. The next is personal development, which is probably one of my favorite pieces, because we never stop learning and growing or acquiring new skills. It'll also have us setting goals and challenging our beliefs and expanding our perspectives. That personal development is not just, climbing the corporate ladder or getting that promotion or reading a new book, right? That it's, like I said, you challenge yourself. You challenge your beliefs in the way that you've been thinking, right? Just like we said with the first episode in Why the Soul Matters, that so many of you all were like, I never thought about the soul in this way. I never thought about, renovating my soul or looking at my soul in this way. And that challenges your beliefs, that challenges your system, right? And you're open to it. You're setting goals for yourself. I'm going to talk about this later, but it wasn't like I didn't write it down or anything, but one of my goals was to get better at my road rage, because I was just losing my mind. So one of my goals was to get better at my road rage, and that was the goal. But then from there, I had to make sure that every time I got in the car, I knew that that was my goal. And then I had to pay attention to how I was responding. Why did it make me so upset? Like, why? Like, that's that self-reflection. That's that getting down deep, right? Like, where is this frustration and this anger coming from? Is it really about the people cutting you off, or is it about something else, right? But anyways, I'm just using that as an example to say that, we on this journey will never stop learning. We'll never stop growing. We'll never stop acquiring new skills. And I think that is something to be so excited about. It's my favorite part of being a human on this earth, is that I don't have to reach a point where I'm, done learning and done growing. I can always be learning and growing, and I can always be in a new season and be challenged, which doesn't always feel good, but it's good for me. And although I grumble about this, and I grumble about this next one, because when you Google the soul, a lot of like spiritual and religious stuff comes up, a lot of symbols, and it just makes me cringe. It's kind of annoying to me, because your soul, if you believe that everyone has a soul, then everyone can be doing this work. And it's not just set aside for the few people who have religious beliefs or who have, a spiritual life or meditate or whatever, because those things are quite often associated with healing and renovating your soul and doing any kind of soul work, right? And that's why what I was going to say was, it's not just psychological either. That's why in the part 2 of this, when we talk about the soul, I want to talk about it from the philosophical view. I want to talk about the philosophical views that have aided all of us, honestly, in our understanding of the soul, because these men back in the 8th and 5th and 9th and 4th. I know I did those numbers all kinds of wrong, but back in those centuries, before Christianity, before a lot of our major religions, right? Before those things even came into fruition, these men were pondering and thinking about the soul, and and there's this evolution of where their beliefs and understanding started, and then how it evolved and what they came to understand and what they came to know. And so while I do not like the insinuation that the soul and soul work is only reserved for those who are religious or spiritual, that is a component of it, though, is that if you are spiritual and if you are religious, that your soul is connected to that deeply in a way, and that's going to affect how you do this work. It's going to affect how you see the world. I am a Christian, right? So it does, my beliefs on the soul, right, are tied to my spirituality. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying it doesn't only have to be that. I wouldn't look at an atheist and go, oh, you're an atheist, so you don't have a soul. I would never say that. I would be like, you need to be working on your soul too. So that's what I'm saying, is that whether you're Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, no religion, no God, whatever it is, like, I still believe that you have a soul. Again, they may not believe that. And let me stop because I'm getting ahead of myself. But in the next episode, we'll talk about that. I'll just lay that there. There are a few more things, right? But those are the main things that I wanted to kind of highlight on what could be a part of our renovating process. And it's not just these things either, but it's also some of the topics that we've already discussed. So paying attention to our projections and the things that we've allowed to be projected onto us, understanding that our bodily awareness starts within, and then also having to go through that process of grieving relationships, right? Which is also a part of a healing process for us, because we don't always realize how much things or people have affected us and what has really attached itself to our souls until we start doing that self-reflection, that introspection and deep contemplation, right? And then from there, you move into that healing process. And I think that this is all even a part of that personal development, that where do I go from there? Oh, I can set a goal. Oh, it's challenging, or oh, it's moving me or affecting me in some way, right? And so, those things, the topics that we've covered so far, even are part of that renovating process. And with renovating the soul and with doing this kind of work, it requires what I would say is a higher level of accountability. I say higher level because from my observation in my little corner, in my little chair, I see this generation and the generations coming behind getting into the trap of always being the victim. And so I say that this requires a higher level of accountability because it becomes less about being the victim and more about you and what you're going to do. In fact, I think that when you do the renovating process, you actually have to admit more about yourself than you do about other people, because it can start with someone else, but who is it going to stop with? I don't think that it can start and stop with that person. It just doesn't always work like that, especially if you're surrounded by people who are not interested in bettering themselves, who are not interested in renovating their souls, who are not interested in introspection or addressing their anger issues or whatever it may be. It's difficult to try to say that I'm going to base my healing, my soul work off of what someone else has done to me. That I have to acknowledge what has been done. Absolutely. I have to acknowledge the hurt. I have to acknowledge the pain, but I can no longer leave my growth, my, again, healing, my trajectory in life, my path in life, right, into the hands of someone else. And so that's why I say it kind of requires this higher level of accountability. And so I think we have an idea, right, that we should move beyond the surface level. I think we have an idea of that. But I think that we have this idea of moving beyond the surface level when it comes to like fashion and our looks and beauty standards. So we're more progressive in a positive way, right? We're more progressive in that sense of like our culture, our workplaces, our homes, our churches, our relationships, right? We're become magazines, internet, TV. There's still a shallowness for sure, but I think that we are having more conversations about how, beauty standards and fashion fashion and makeup and all of these things don't necessarily define us. We get that when it comes to like moving beyond the surface level. But I wonder if do we equally realize that getting to the roots or the foundation of our addictions, our jealousy, our need for attention, anger, depression, loneliness, pride, greed, shame, our passiveness, our people pleasing, the disorders, right? The things that we've allowed to overwhelm us and overtake us. I wonder if we equally realize that getting to the roots of these things, the why, the foundation, is also moving beyond the surface level. Because again, we're good at saying you're more than your looks and you got something deep inside of you. You're not your clothes or your weight or your shoe size. I am not my hair in the diary, right? Like, we're good at saying that for moving beyond the surface level, but are we really talking about that moving beyond the surface level, right? When we're talking about the renovating process, that we're not just looking at the top, is also getting down deep into why am I addicted to, inserted here. That it's also like, why do these video games affect my moods? Or that it's also, why am I so passive? Why am I a people pleaser? That asking those hard questions, right, and having to look at those qualities that are within us is also, it's, in my opinion, more important, but it's equal to, like, that is moving beyond the surface as well. We don't always struggle with uncovering or realizing that we have that. You see people make announcements about stuff all the time. I am depressed. I am depressed and I am anxious. I am overwhelmed. I am passive. I do have an issue. But that's not the hard part. The hard part is not always saying I'm a people pleaser or I am struggling with X, Y, and Z. Or for admitting, right, or saying, like for me personally, that I'm bad at conflict resolution. It wasn't hard to say that I'm bad at conflict resolution. I had been saying that I was bad at conflict resolution for years. I've been saying that. What was difficult was actually sitting down and trying to address and figure out why I'm bad at conflict. Or conflict resolution. It was years of me saying it before I finally sat down late in my 20s and said, why have I been saying this all this time? Because it took someone outside of me to say, you're not bad at conflict resolution. And I'm like, I've been telling myself that I was bad at conflict resolution for years. And I even knew the origin point. I knew that the reason why I thought I was bad at conflict resolution was because I never seen healthy conflict resolution growing up. I'm thinking that everything's going to end in a fight, in an argument. I'm thinking that once I say something to this person, they're going to blow up. And that's where the unhealthy side of conflict resolution came in for me. See, I could do conflict resolution. I could sit down. I could have the conversations. But it was the emotional aspect, the torment, the turmoil that it caused me before going into those conversations and even after or even during. That during those conversations, because my expectations was that, man, if I say this, they ain't gonna take no accountability. They gonna yell, they gonna cuss, they gonna fight. Like, I'm not trying to fight today, okay? Like, it was those things that then kept me from actually speaking up or saying my truth or saying how a situation really affected me, right? And then I would leave that and say, dang, I should have said da 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 da. And so it was that part of that's why conflict resolution was hard for me. That's what I thought. That's why I kept saying I was bad at conflict resolution, was because of what was happening within me. Not because I couldn't sit down and do it, and not because I couldn't help other people do it, but because of the emotions that it would evoke in me prior to having those conversations and then even after. And so then what happened is that I started observing people who were good at conflict resolution, but a lot of what they gave me, their tips, started from within. It started from from their confidence, from their patience, from their value or their worth. Why is it important that this conflict is resolved? And not every conflict was equally as important to these people either. I'm just saying that to say that when we are moving beyond the surface level, we have to go beyond just saying and admitting things. We actually need to, again, go back to that self-reflection, that introspection, that deep contemplation where we sit down, and I like to say we sit in it and we think about it and we get to the root and we just uncover that part. And that part in itself can be really hard, because even though it was easy to pinpoint and say, oh yeah, I know that I've not seen healthy conflict resolution in my life, like ever, in personal relationships. I have not seen that ever. And that what was considered conflict resolution was really just sweeping things under the rug. I knew I didn't want to do that, but I also didn't know a better way, right? And so my point in saying that is that when we're digging deep and we're moving beyond the surface level and we're peeling back the walls and peeling back the layers as we would do if we're renovating a home, but when we're renovating our souls and really peeling this stuff back, we don't just stop at looking at the problem. See, in a house, they can't just uncover, I should say they shouldn't just uncover an issue that needs to be fixed and then walk away, whether they did it or not. And I say that because there are things that have happened to us that we didn't necessarily put on us or in us. I didn't put myself in an unhealthy conflict resolution environment. It's what I was handed in this life. But when I recognized how it has affected me, I shouldn't, even though I did, ignore it for years upon years, claiming things that were not true. Right? Or claiming the wrong part because I never took the time to actually sit down and think about, why do you think you're bad at conflict resolution? Why do you think you're bad at this? And then go to, okay, I understand that it was your environment, but there's something else that happens to you specifically. Nothing that you can blame on your family or friends or church life or whatever, however you grew up. It's like something happened to you. Like, what step are you missing? Why is this affecting you so much, right? And so same thing with renovating the house. Like I was saying, I've been on my HGTV kick, and I've watched them pull back walls and see water damage, or pull back, foundations and see something. And I don't think it's just because the cameras are on. At least I like to hope that it's not just because the cameras are on. But when you uncover something, you shouldn't just go, oh, they got water damage, let's patch it back up. And that has actually been the case. There were people who had done work before those people did, and they did leave things damaged. They did uncover things and not fix it, right? And then what happens? Does it get better? No, it only gets worse. And that's why you have to fix it, because even though it may not have affected the quality of living up until that point, it's not going to get better. It's actually going to keep getting worse. And then the damage could be irreparable. Is that the word? The damage could be so far gone that they can't even fix whatever the situation is, or it could cause more damage because you didn't address it then and there. And that's what happens to us when we recognize things, right? And things keep coming up for us, and we keep saying things and professing things and admitting things, but we're not actually really digging deep down. Those things don't just flutter away and get off of us. They actually intensify. That over time, what we've been saying we're so bad at, my depression, my whatever, you're letting it sit there. And you're letting it sit there and lie dormant and trying to patch it up with things and people and places and travel and pictures and whatever it is, relationships. You're trying to patch it up with all of these things, not realizing that by patching it up, you're actually doing more damage than if you would just stop, recognize it, and fix it. Right? And that's hard. It's not easy to just fix something. That's not an overnight thing for us. Now, and when you're renovating a house, they can just boop, 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 boop. But for us, and I would say even for the houses too, suppressing things does not get rid of them. So I want to give this definition of suppression. Suppression is the conscious, intentional exclusion from consciousness of a thought or feeling. Another definition is to inhibit the growth or development of. I'm big on definitions. I'm big on unpacking words and defining words, because we use a lot of terms and we don't know what they mean. And baby, you can look in social media comments, Instagram comments, and see that people just be using all kinds of stuff out of context because they don't know what they're talking about. So it's important for me to define certain terms. So I'm going to read that again. Suppression is the conscious, intentional exclusion from consciousness of a thought or feeling to inhibit the growth or development of. So there's psychological suppression, and there's different versions of suppression. So we're talking about more psychological suppression, right? This emotional part of it that refers to push down things, right? Or ignore certain thoughts, feelings, memories, or impulses. And this can also be, like for me, I think this is how it was for me with a lot of things, a defense mechanism where you're trying to cope with something, or you're trying to avoid dealing with the uncomfortable emotions or experience or distress that comes with it. That is me. Like I already said that I ignore, I suppress, because I feel like I'm helping myself not get to a place where I don't want to go, right? But suppression is not, it's not healthy. And there's a difference between repression and suppression. They're oftentimes used interchangeably, but repression and suppression have slightly different meanings in psychology. So repression involves unconsciously pushing unwanted thoughts or memories out of awareness, while suppression, what we're talking about, involves a more conscious and effort to push them away. So consciousness is the quality or state of being aware, especially of something within oneself. It's also defined as awareness, and it is the normal state of conscious life. Conscious is perceiving, apprehending, or noticing with a degree of controlled thought or observation. Simply put, it means that we are aware, that we are making the intentional, conscious decision to push something away, to ignore it, to ignore how it affects us, to ignore how it's bothered us, to ignore whatever it is, to not say anything, to not do anything. We'd rather suppress it and push it away for whatever your reason may be. It could be a defense mechanism. It could just be what you're used to, right? And when you look at the renovation process, right, even though that's not a psychological thing, you're aware. You are aware that there is an issue, and then you patch it up. And it's the same thing with us. We are aware that there's an issue, but I am aware. I know that I'm pushing this down. It's not repression, it's suppression. I consciously am pushing this away and putting it down and pushing it to the side. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with how it makes me feel. And let me just say this, that is okay sometimes. It is okay sometimes. If you are at a party and you feel like somebody then stepped on your toe or did something that's going to bring you out of character, right? Like, there are times when I think that is okay to do. But I do not think it should be our pattern of life. I do not think that we should always go around suppressing things and never pulling them up and addressing them. Right? So I say all of that to say that being an active participant in renovating our souls means that we don't just ignore or suppress things. And it doesn't mean that we stop at basic awareness or admitting, like I said earlier, yeah, we can say that we're something and we can be aware that we're something, but we don't just stop there in the renovating process. No, we keep digging, we keep asking, we keep discovering, we keep trying to figure out, right? We peel back, we do the hard work, we pay attention, we get involved, not only to just identify the issues, but to address them as well, and to try to start that healing process where needed and where necessary, or to set goals that will then help us to restore, repair, right? Improve, become better, right? I always say that this is work. And I love the analogy of the renovation process, because you can't come to the renovation site in your heels or your best dress shoes or your best sneakers. You got to come ready to work. You got to come ready to use your hands. You got to come ready to pick up a tool. And that's the same thing with this renovation process. It's not just this cute little, like when you Google it, it's so cringy to me, but it's just this like, oh, we're going to a meditation retreat and we're going to dig down deep and we're going to admit some things and then we're all going to leave and we're all going to forget what we did because this really didn't help anything anyway. Like, it's not just this 5-second, 5-minute thing. And it's not, and I want to be careful in saying this, but it's not even just, like I said, reserved for going to church or wherever your spiritual, gatherings may be, right? It's not just reserved for those moments, because I am a Christian and I don't see other Christians doing this. I don't see an emphasis in churches talking about digging deep in your soul, right? Everyone's still stuck on the surface level. Everyone's still talking about, politics or how you treat your neighbor, or they're just talking about, oh yeah, don't come in with a mask on, come as you are. What does that mean? What does that really mean? Like, how are you really here to help me and aid me? And so I love that in the renovating process, we're really talking about doing the work, like getting our hands dirty, getting involved, digging deep, right? Not staying where we've been. It is so important to our entire lives. I chose Unsellable Houses specifically as the example and the analogy because they don't tear down the entire home. And they're also not dealing with homes that are completely damaged either. They're working with structures that have existed for years, with people who have been living in them, surviving in them for years. And now they're tasked with renovating it. And this is true for us as well. Many of us have been on this earth for a while, whether that's 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 60 years, 40 years, right? We've been on this earth in these bodies for years, and we've had to face, like we talked about with the markets, right? We've had to face bad seasons. We faced great seasons. We've had to face a lot of issues and remedies. We've had to face betrayal, right? And hurt and pain. We've had to face losing relationships. We've had to face the fact that we've caused hurt and damage to other people. We've had to look at our lives and say, wow, I really messed up there, or I missed out on these opportunities. So when we're talking about renovating our souls, for many of us, we're starting from years of things that have already happened. We're not starting fresh, like just got here to earth, like in the movie Soul. Like, we're not like, yep, just got here, time to do this thing. Like, no, we're starting from years of things that have already been a part of our structure, our foundation. We are starting from a place where things have already attached themselves to us, where we've already been in environments where we've already allowed things to develop us, right? And we cannot just simply tear ourselves down and start over. Like I was talking about earlier with that definition of going back to a former version of us. We can't just snap our fingers and go, yep, 20-year-old me with her head on our shoulders, let's start over. As much as we want time travel to be a thing, and as much as I love movies where they get to go back in time and, do over and get another chance, that is not our reality. It's just not. We haven't figured out the quantum time zone that Marvel was stressing me out about, because it was just confusing. Anyways, but we don't have that, right? So we are not just tearing our entire selves down and starting over. We're starting from a place. We're starting from a structure. We're starting from a foundation that has already existed for years. And we're looking at, what do we keep? What do we get rid of? Because like I said with the Unsellable Houses, not every room has to be touched. Not every room or space needs to be renovated. And that's the same with us. We don't have to go through our entire lives and say, gotta change this, and I gotta change this, and I gotta change this, and I gotta change this. And I would also add that we don't always have to start with the biggest issue. We don't always have to start with the thing that we know bothers us the most or has kept us held bound the most, because sometimes that is really hard to jump into. It's sometimes best to start with maybe a work issue that came up, right? Or maybe an issue with a friend, or maybe an issue that you just realized you have, like with my road rage. It's not a big deal, but that affects so much in my life. And it showed me that I can change. it made me believe that if I can actually get better at road rage, what else could I get better at? So we don't always have to start with the biggest thing. Like, we don't always have to jump to the roof, you know? We can start with maybe just a little paint. We can start with something that, you know, is not the end all be all, but that does matter and that does affect us from time to time. And then we can build our way and work our way up to addressing those bigger things, right? And I've been thinking lately about and experiencing how renovating our souls is not just for right now. And that's also why I don't think we have to necessarily jump in and put our claws into the biggest problem in our lives. Because we may not actually see immediate payoff or benefits. That's actually why I don't go to the gym. I don't work out, because why am I working out for 2-3 weeks and I don't see a six pack? That's crazy. But not getting those immediate rewards and benefits, it can be another aspect of this process that really makes it difficult and undesirable, because it is a lot of work. But I've been saying this so much lately, is that it's more of an investment, and you can't go wrong with investing in yourself. No matter what season of your life you're in, good, bad, up, down, someone left you, you got a new person, someone at your job's acting crazy, whatever it is, like, you can't go wrong in wanting to better yourself. You can't go wrong in wanting to renovate your soul and invest in yourself. You can't. I was saying this to my little cousin, because I was telling her that I wish in my time of singleness that I realized this. That I realized that if I was taking the time to invest in me, if I took the time to just love on me, to look deeper, to try to sort through some of my issues instead of trying to be in a relationship, baby, I couldn't have gone wrong. So I do still stand by, like, investing in yourself in a healthy and a right way. You can't go wrong in, and that's what this process is as well. And it's not just for the past. It is, like I said, it's not just about what we've been through, and it's not just about right now, but it's also for the future. It's not just reflection and introspection for what I've been through, but also for what I'm going through or what I might go through. That I'm not just sitting down and doing the work because of, you know, the things that happened then, because what happened then could come back and happen again. How are you going to respond? When situations come up, when memories surface, when, like I said, if you've been working on something, right, and or someone you haven't seen in a while that you had a falling out with, and you see them, are you still in fight mode, or are you like at peace because you've dealt with those things? So I like to say that this renovating the soul process, again, is not just for the past, and it's not even just for right now. It's really for the future. If you have kids, it could also be for your children, for them to see and them to have an earlier start than many of us have had. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm responding differently, not just from the outside anymore, but from within. That, yeah, I might go up and I may respond differently from the outside, but on the inside, it's still a struggle for me. But no, when I'm renovating and doing the real work, that even the things that used to bother me on the inside don't bother me or offend me anymore. That is not that, again, going back to my little road rage example, that it's not just about, I stopped honking my horn and I stopped cussing people out, but actually it doesn't even bother me that they cut me off. Now, dangerous stuff and crazy, dumb people still bothers me. But, you know, those little things that used to bother me I don't take cutting me off personal anymore. I don't take, someone honking at me personal anymore. Although, don't do that. But so how much have I changed? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I don't, those things don't have to offend me and affect me from within, even if my outside response might have changed first, which is okay. That can be the first change, but the real change is how I'm responding from within. They're not going to see that. They're not going to feel that. It's not going to be for them. It's going to be for me. And so renovating now, doing this work now. Why is renovating so important? Doing this work now helps us with our lives later and forever. It's not just about like a 4-month journey or an 8-month journey. It's a lifestyle. This is a lifelong thing of renovating our soul, because our eye, like what we see, how we see things, our spirit, our skills, our emotions, they sharpen, and we begin to see earlier signs of things. We begin to see the same predicaments that we've worked so hard to get out of. We start to see signs earlier than we did before. So then we know, hey, like this is taking me back, or this is something I can already see is going to happen, and I don't want any parts because I know where I belong. Like experts get better with time, right? You sharpen those skills, you get better with time, and you start to be able to respond faster. You start to be able to even help other people, right? Like I said, if you have children, you have family who don't know how to do this, they may see your growth. They may not, but let's say they do. Let's say the close friends, they're like, wow, you used to go off about that, and now you don't even say anything. And you can say, yeah, well, it doesn't bother me, right? So it's not just about you. It's not just about now. It's about later and forevermore. So I'm going to use this last example, and then I'm going to close up and we're going to get out of here. But I want to say this, like, you're not always going to get this right. And I want to share the story really fast, that there was a Christmas where it's Christmas at my grandma's house, and I started to see the signs of an argument developing. And I started to see that this is not about to be good. This is not going to end well. And I was sitting next to my little cousin, and I was like, oh, it's time for me to go. And she didn't see what I was seeing, but I was like, oh, it's time for me to go. And I didn't really move. I didn't really like actually get up. I kept saying like, oh, okay, I need to leave. I probably said it a couple times. And then as I started to gather my stuff, because I did stall. That's what I'm saying. You're not always going to get it right. I did kind of stall because I wasn't 100% confident, but I knew what I knew, if that makes sense. And so I started to get my stuff. But by the time I started to get my stuff, all hell had broken loose. And I still think about that periodically to this day, of like, what would have happened if I would have just got out of there when I knew and when I seen the signs? Because then I ended up getting involved in the argument, and that's why I was trying to get out of there, was that it was also dealing with me. Or I put myself in it. Actually, I should say it like that, and that was a telltale sign for me that I knew this is not how I want to go back into this situation. But unfortunately, because I didn't listen to myself, trust myself, and keep learning from the experience that I had already had, I sat there and then got involved in something that I didn't necessarily need to be involved in. And so I share that because I was better at seeing things. And this is not a diss to my cousin at all. She couldn't see what I could see, because I started paying attention to certain things and certain elements and listening differently, right? And again, she's younger than me. It's not a diss to her at all. I didn't expect her to know or see. But even when we talked about it later, she was like, I didn't know what you were talking about. I didn't know why you kept saying you had to go. She's like, I thought you were just saying you had to leave because you just had to leave. And I'm like, nah, girl, I saw it festering. I heard it coming. I felt it coming. But no, I really did hear this stuff, right? And so I if I would have just trusted myself and walked away, what would that outcome have been? Okay, so let's wrap it up. Renovating is a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and practical thing, right? It's something that we're going to be doing and should be doing for the rest of our lives. It doesn't always have to be daunting. You don't always have to try to renovate every area and aspect of your life, right? And we're not always going to get it right. But I wanted to put this in the form of the analogy to show the practical side. Because again, like I said, you Google the soul, some weird stuff, and just kind of all these associations come up. But when I was talking about, and in part 2, we're going to talk about this more, this contemplating the soul, thinking about how your soul affects your life, it was normal. It was practical to be thinking about the soul. They talked about the functions, how it works, and the fact that you can have a good soul, you can have a bad soul, right? What qualities is associated with, and how the soul affects how we think, how we behave, what we feel, how we respond, how we treat others, how we lead, love, and rule. That the soul is responsible for so much of who we are in our day-to-day activities, that is why those men took the time to contemplate and ponder, write about and think about and provide logical evidence and arguments for the soul. And so stick around for part 2 for sure. But thinking of it as renovating should hopefully paint this picture that we have to get down and dirty, and we have to plan, and we have to be aware, and we have to learn, and we have to strengthen our skills, and we will struggle, and we also don't have to do it alone. I haven't seen not one renovation show where one person is doing all the work for a renovating project. We don't have to do it alone. We won't always get it right. And like I said, every area doesn't require our attention and our time, but it's a process. We have to have patience with ourselves. Please have patience with yourself. Be gracious with yourself. Be gracious with others, because some people, again, they're not privy to this. I was thinking about something I seen the other day, and I thought that person probably it doesn't have access, or is not even in a mental space where they could stop and listen to a podcast like this. Like, they're not thinking about a podcast. They're not thinking about a self-help book. They're in so much turmoil and distress because of their situation and what they're going through that they can't do this. So be gracious to others, because you don't know what they're going through, and everyone doesn't have the privilege of listening to a podcast and getting a book and doing this kind of work. It just doesn't happen. But that's also why you can use these skills, and you can use your own process, your own story, your own journey to help those who don't have access to it, right? So remember that there's a lot of things that are outside of your control. And when it gets hard, to take a break, stop, rest, and when you can, reconvene. Don't push yourself beyond where you can go. And let's wrap this up with saying that renovating the soul is essential for many reasons. It is the number one being that our soul is responsible for so much of our lives, that it's the foundation of our lives, let's say it like that. But also because we don't just renovate for today, but for tomorrow, for next year, for forever. And that is not just for ourselves. And it can help other people and influence other people, right? That renovating our soul is for the surprises, for the rude comments, for the stares, for the people who cut you off, for the betrayal, right? But for the goals, for your celebrations, for your wins. Like, this is not all bad. There are things that make us happy that we can look at and celebrate and embrace, right? That, wow, that made my soul just jump and leap. What is that? I want to keep doing that. That through this, you can discover your passions and the things that you were meant to do and the reason why you were put on this earth, right? So it's not all daunting. It's not all bad. It's not all, peeling things back and finding bugs and roaches and water damage, but you could find something beautiful, right? One of the things that is often found in when you renovate a home is you take back carpet and you will find original hardwood floors, and those are like gold, right? So it's not always finding bad things, but renovating the soul is everything. It is our lives. And there's this lady that is coming back in my mind, and it's just bugging me, so I'm going to end it with this. There was a young lady that I follow. Her name is Chesley Christ. And I think about her often because she committed suicide. She jumped off of her apartment building in New York. And Chesley, I always forget which one she was, but she was the year that like Miss America, Miss USA, Miss Teen USA, I think like all of them were black women. And I cannot remember which one Chesley was. I always get it mixed up. She was either Miss America, Miss US. I don't think she was Miss USA. I want to say maybe she was Miss America. I think. Don't quote me. But I started following her, and then she just had this big, bright, outgoing personality. You would have looked at her and thought that she had a perfect life, honestly. Like, you would have looked at her and said she's living her dream. She was an anchor on E, I think, and she was a what's it called, a talk host, not a spokeswoman. I don't know what they're called when they host the show, but she was doing that. And again, she won one of the largest pageants in that are out there, right? Like, she reigned and did that for a year, and then she went on to lead a successful career, and she was super successful before that. And when she jumped and she died, it was like one thing to find out she died. It was another thing to find out that she committed suicide. and to hear the people around her say that they didn't really see the signs, they didn't know what was happening, and that broke my heart for weeks. I normally don't cry over people that I don't know, and I don't think I had cried over a death since Whitney Houston, but that tore me up because I would have never guessed that someone like her would be that, I don't want to say unsatisfied, but just that broken, that hurt, that hopeless, that you would take your own life in such a way when she was such a light to people that didn't know her, to the people that did know her. But I think about this all the time. I think about even like Marilyn Monroe, I've wrote a blog about this of, these people who we look at and say, wow, they're living the dream. They have everything that they could possibly have, and they're reaching their goals and they're doing the things, but inside is a totally different story. Inside lives a person who is not happy, who is not living a dream, who is living a nightmare. And that's why I believe in this work so much, for the Chesleys, for the Marilyns, for even the Twitches, right? For the people who just feel like there's no other option, like who are not encouraged that life is a process and that depression doesn't always have to be your story, and that you can come alongside people who will uplift you and encourage you and be there to kind of like lift you up when you can't hold yourself up. It's not just do the work because just do the work because I started the podcast. It's really from a place of deep passion and deep love for seeing people flourish, for seeing people not just happy but whole, and for seeing people overcome their struggles, overcome those addictions, and to see people turn their weaknesses into strengths, and to realize how good it feels to grow and how good it feels to see that you're able to grow. And I'm gonna stop this because I'm getting emotional, but that is where my heart is. I believe in this so much because I hope that I can encourage someone who may be feeling like, I don't know how to go from here, and I don't know how to do from here, and I don't feel like life is worth it, to say that life is a journey, that you will always be growing. You don't have to feel like you've reached a peak. You don't have to feel like there's nothing more left for you to do on this earth, or that that you can never change or never overcome even some of the strongest and craziest demons, right? I just am crazy enough to believe that you can. And I'm crazy enough to want to be in the trenches and doing the work alongside you. That's why I always extend that olive branch, that I am not a podcaster or influencer, or it's on, I'm not a guru. I'm not any of those things where you can't reach out and touch me and have a conversation and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Like, whatever it is, right? Or like, how would you respond to this? I want to be there for you all, especially for the people who don't have a lot of community and don't feel like they have that outlet. I hope that you all enjoyed this episode. I know that it was a little longer, but that's on purpose because I was gone for so long. I wanted to give you all some really good meat and just a really good episode to chew on. And so look out for part 2, where we're going to talk more about the soul. I just hope that this gave you some nuggets. I hope that it made the renovation process and that renovating piece of renovating the soul a little more practical, a little more doable. And now, even when people ask you about it, you have something, an analogy that you could give them, right? But I am just so excited. I'm so thankful that I'm back, and you might be able to hear, you might not be able to hear. Still struggling with a little congestion, but that's okay. I am so much better, and I'm just thankful that I was able to finally get this out there, finally do this, and just be back with you all. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support. Reach out to me on social media. Email me, renovatingthesoul@gmail.com, if you have any questions, comments, or follow-ups. So excited to do this first soul talk, and I hope that you will keep tuning in and share the podcast, like the podcast, rate the podcast on all your major platforms. Thank you all so much. Until next time, let's keep doing the work to renovate the soul.